The Return of the Living Dead is one of the greatest zombie movies out there. Acting as both a spiritual and literal successor to the Night of the Living Dead, it follows a group of punk rock survivors and a few medical supply workers as they strive to live through an outbreak of zombies. This movie is fun and awesome and impossible not to love. Be warned, there are spoilers ahead, and if you'd like to survive the inevitable zombie apocalypse, then be sure to subscribe. We open at a medical supply warehouse where a man named Frank is teaching the new hire, Freddy. After packaging up a skeleton, they head into the freezer where a fresh corpse is hanging.
You don't want your inventory to lose its freshness.
We briefly cut to Freddy's punk rock friends as they're looking for a place to party.
Yeah, and I ain't in no mood to die tonight.
I like death.
Frank and Freddy then discuss an old movie called The Night of the Living Dead, and Frank reveals that it was actually based off of real events that happened due to a chemical spill in a morgue with a compound called 2,4,5-trioxin. It turns out that many of the infected bodies were sent to Frank's supply company by mistake.
Want to see him?
See him?
Corpses.
They head to the basement where multiple barrels filled with corpses are resting. Frank wipes off one of the glass panels before smacking a barrel, causing noxious gas to erupt and spray the two men. They lose consciousness, and we see the body inside begin to melt, and the fumes spread throughout the warehouse, where it infects the hanging corpse. We then meet a man named Colonel Glover and learn that it was his error that had the barrels sent to the wrong warehouse, and he's been trying to track them down for the last 14 years, but he's had no success. The punks then show up at Freddy's work, but decide to go hang out in the graveyard next door until Freddy's off work, and we learn that they're called Casey, Spider, Scuzz, Trash, Chuck, Tina, and Suicide. Freddy and Frank wake up a bit later, but both of them feel really sick. They hear a dog whimpering, and when they investigate, they find a specimen that has come to life despite being completely in half. They then hear banging on the freezer door, but are able to lock the door before the corpse gets out. They call their boss and tell him what's going on.
We have a little problem.
Trash and Spider begin talking about death, and Trash tells of what she thinks would be the worst way to go.
A bunch of old men to get around me and start biting and eating me alive.
I see.
Trash then undresses and begins to dance on a tombstone because, she's normal. That's normal. The boss, Bert, arrives and says that if the bodies have become reanimated, then they'll have to kill it. They decide to do what they did in the movies and try destroying the corpse's brain with a pickaxe. However, that doesn't seem to kill the undead, so they proceed to saw its head off entirely. This creates a different kind of problem, as now both the body and the head are alive and causing a ruckus in the warehouse. Since that didn't work, Bert has the idea to cremate the body at the mortuary in the graveyard next door. The mortician is a man named Ernie, so yeah, we've got both Bert and Ernie in this movie. When Frank and Freddy show up carrying the corpse, they're looking really gaunt, but more on that later. They show Ernie the alive dead man and explain their situation, and he agrees to let them use the incinerator.
Dust to dust.
As the corpse goes up in flames, the smoke rises into the sky. Unfortunately, thunder strikes and rain begins to pour over the graveyard. The punks flee back to the car, saying that the rain is burning their skin. Bert is ecstatic to be rid of the body, but Frank and Freddy have started to regress significantly, so Ernie calls a paramedic. The punk's car won't start, and the roof begins to leak. They also hear a strange pounding sound, and we see corpses begin to dig their way out of their coffins. Tina goes to the supply warehouse to find Freddy, but as she calls out, it's clear that no one is there. She wanders to the basement where she sees this. She flees, but the stairs break and she's forced to lock herself inside of a metal cabinet. The undead shows that he isn't brainless and uses chains on a pulley to yank the door off of its hinges. The rest of the punks then decide to head to the warehouse to find Freddy and Tina. They hear screaming from the basement and run down to help. Suicide doesn't live up to his namesake and is quickly killed by the zombie. The survivors flee upstairs and hold the door closed. The paramedics then arrive at the mortuary, but they're dumbfounded when they find that Freddy and Frank have no pulse, and their body temperatures are in the 70s. The punks run from the warehouse and re-enter the graveyard. Unfortunately for them, the graveyard's residents have all begun to surface. The group splits up, and trash ends up being surrounded by old men and eaten alive. The paramedics tell Frank and Freddy that they are technically dead.
Dead people don't move around and talk.
They hear pounding on the mortuary's front door, and Ernie runs to answer it.
Are you crazy? Are you on PCP?
Spider, Scuzz, and Tina enter, yelling that the dead people are rising from the ground and attacking people. The paramedics run to their ambulance to get a stretcher and radio for backup, but they don't last too long. We see Chuck and Cassie are able to flee into the supply warehouse and lock the doors closed. They try to call the police, but a zombie bursts through the window and interrupts the call. Ernie goes to check on the paramedics, but finds them dead. He runs back inside the mortuary, where he lowers metal covers all over the windows. They find that their phone lines have gone dead, so they continue to barricade the doors and make the mortuary as secure as possible. One of the zombies hears a radio call and decides to make an order.
Send more paramedics.
After everything is secure, Freddy says that all of his muscles are cramping up, and Ernie realizes that he's beginning to go through the stages of rigor mortis. They hear sirens and see another ambulance pull up to the graveyard, but that doesn't go well. They then hear glass shatter and see that the zombies have broken down one of the barriers. While trying to fix it, Scuzz is grabbed and bitten, and he dies a moment later. Ernie is able to get one of the zombies, or half of a zombie, I guess, and they strap it to an embalming table. When they speak to the zombie, it replies. They ask why it's eating people, but she corrects them, saying that they only eat brains because it helps the pain of being dead go away.
Hey, Bert.
I can feel myself rot.
Bert and Ernie decide that they need to isolate Frank and Freddy. They carry them into the chapel and lock them inside, but Tina is adamant about not leaving Freddy's side, so she gets locked inside with him. Two policemen then show up to investigate the missing paramedics, but that goes about as well as you'd expect.
Send more cops.
Freddy dies, but his eyes open a second later, and he lunges at Tina. Spider, Bert, and Ernie rush inside once they hear the screams and save Tina, splashing Freddy's face with acid as they flee. Bert and Spider realize that the cop car outside is still running and decide that it's their only chance to escape. They run out and drive directly up to the mortuary door, but they can't get the others as the undead are swarming them. With no other option, they leave and say that they'll send help to hopefully rescue Ernie and Tina. They drive out of the graveyard, but a horde of undead stop them, and they end up crashing into a wall. They run inside of the supply warehouse and end up reuniting with Cassie and Chuck. Freddy angrily hunts down Ernie and Tina, but they're able to climb into the attic and keep the undead off their trail. We also see Frank take the noble way out. He starts the incinerator and hops inside, choosing death over undeath, I suppose. A full squadron of cops then show up to the graveyard, and you'll never guess what happens. Hearing a helicopter, Bert realizes that this may be the group's only chance at survival. There's a phone in the basement, but they'll have to take care of the zombie down there before it will be of any use. They open the door, and Bert smacks the zombie's head off. They descend the stairs and are able to make a call to the police. Unfortunately, as they're on the phone, the police are overrun by a horde of undead, and the barricade is now compromised. Bert sees the phone number placed on the outside of one of the barrels and gives it a call. The call connects to Colonel Glover. The colonel asks a few questions and determines that they're in something called a Q2 status. He calls his superiors and they greenlight a contingency plan. We then see a nuclear missile get fired off. Bert notices a whistling sound, but it's too late to do anything, and the bomb explodes. Colonel Glover says that the contingency plan worked perfectly and that they can leave the cleanup to the rain. And that is where this movie ends. That ending, man, like, it's so abrupt. Like, the first time I watched this, I couldn't believe they just wiped out the entire city. Like, I guess it's a brutally effective protocol, but man, it just caught me off guard. Like, there's so much in this movie to love. Like, from the fun dialogue to the over-the-top characters to some weirdly deep lore. Like, the fact that Ernie is secretly a Nazi in hiding. Like, there's a lot of clues in there for it, and I think it's actually been confirmed. I'm not 100%, but I think it has. The movie has a little bit of everything, and every bit is incredible. It was cool seeing Frank and Freddy transform throughout the movie as well, and I really loved seeing how all of these unlikely characters ended up joining and allying as things progressed. Allowing each of the characters to be fully fledged and over-the-top caricatures was really fun, and having the zombies be intelligent and vocal was unique and kind of terrifying in a way. My ultimate takeaway is that this is one of the best zombie movies out there, and that thigh-high leg warmers need to make a comeback. Don't judge me, I'm only human, but they definitely do. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you've got a movie that you'd like me to watch, then put that down in the comments below. But yeah, when the zombie outbreak happens, I'll be one of the innumerable dead, so give me your brain, or run as fast as you can. Bye-bye!
Can you wiggle your eyebrows up and down and say brains at the same time? Well, let me see you eat brains.
Nothing escapes the photographic eye. Even Scuzz found a partner. Tongues, tongues.
Hey, Al, be gentle, all right?